Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Box Office Talk. This is the show where I break down what happened at the box office, see if my predictions for the top 5 are correct, then make predictions for next week's top 5. So let's get right on into it. Last week I predicted the number 1 would be AntMan and the Wasp: Quantumania, number 2 would be Marlowe, number 3 would be Magic Mike's Last Dance, number 4 would be Avatar: The Way of Water, and number 5 would be 80 for Brady. And I only got 2 out of 5 of my predictions right for this weekend, mostly because, I made a bold prediction last weekend that I think I even admitted to you guys it might be a bit of a stretch, and it turns out it was. But there are also some other movies that kind of flip-flopped here, so let's go over what happened in the overall top 10. Number 1 was, of course, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I don't think anyone was underestimating that. Usually the Ant-Man movies are obviously not the highest-grossing ones in the MCU, but this is definitely the highest opening weekend one of them has ever had. It made $104 million this weekend. Now, some quick stats for you, some pretty simple ones. It is the 5th MCU movie in a row to open over $100 million. So I guess that includes No Way Home, Multiverse of Madness, Thor 4, Black Panther, now this. So yeah, this is the 5th one to open over 100 mil. So that's, kind of impressive. Obviously there's going to be a weekend drop off. We'll see how much of a drop off that'll be. I'm very interested to see that, since the cinema score was solid. Cinema score was like a B, but like considering the reception is mixed on Rotten Tomatoes audience and critic, it'll be interesting to see how that carries over into the next weekend. But anyways, going back to these quicker stats, it is the highest opening weekend of 2023 so far. Obviously there hasn't been a whole lot of competition, but this is the one swinging right out of the gate. And it is only the 3rd February movie to open over 100 million. The other 2 movies being Black Panther and Deadpool. Of course, they're comic book movies. Those are the only other 2 movies to do that. Anyways, going into some other domestic stats real quick. It had a higher opening weekend than the first Ant-Man, which was 57 million, and Ant-Man and the Wasp by 75, obviously, as the franchise continues and the tie-ins to the other films grew a little bit more prominent. This one obviously being the big kicker, since it's directly kind of marketing itself as like this is the prologue to Kang Dynasty, whatever the hell. More people come in, more people interested, more people want to see what this universe is going to be now. But as far as the MCU as a whole right now, it needs 30 million until it outgrosses the entire domestic run of the Incredible Hulk. So obviously, it hasn't outgrossed any of them yet, but it will outgross their lowest grossing one. So there you go. Worldwide, it is sitting at 225 million. So that is 40 million until it outgrosses the Incredible Hulk. As far as the Ant-Man movies go, it needs 293 million until it outgrosses the first movie. So I think it will do that. Oh, sorry, I totally forgot. And domestically, it needs 76 million to do that. So next weekend, I think we will definitely be seeing both of those, the domestic and worldwide one, outrank the first Ant-Man at the very least. But like I said, the more interesting conversation is going to be in the weeks to come to see how it drops off, because obviously I think it's going to beat Cocaine Bear next weekend at the box office. But as these other big franchise movies come out, you got your Creed 3, you got your Scream 6. It'll be interesting to see how it holds off against those. But even next weekend for its second weekend drop off, obviously these movies have a big drop off unless there's like really something exciting to talk about and they hold over very well. But it's kind of increasingly more rare when it comes to these MCU movies these days. So yeah, it's kind of basic, like whatever. The budget is like 200 million, so it'll probably do okay, especially with this kind of opening over, opening 25 million over it worldwide. So it's doing fine. Everything's going fine with the MCU. Just because it doesn't reach like Infinity War Endgame level heights like every single time. It's like, well, take everything into consideration, it's doing all right. But the more interesting conversation is going to be the next weekends to see culturally where it's kind of standing. So that's all I really have to say about this movie right now, other than it was bad. and that's why I'm looking forward to seeing if anyone else catches on and it drops over 60% or not. Let's move on to number 2, which is Avatar: The Way of Water, sneaking right back up there again, making $6 million, adding to a domestic total of $657 million. Domestically, it still needs $128 million until it outgrosses the first movie. $14 million away from Titanic now. That's very good. And $61 million behind Top Gun Maverick. However, for the overall domestic runs list, it has outgrossed Jurassic World by $5 million, and it only needs $14 million now to get surpass Titanic and become the 8th highest grossing domestic run of all time. That's pretty amazing. Let's move on to worldwide, which is $2,243,000,000. It still needs $680 million until it outgrosses the first Avatar. At this point, the worldwide numbers are starting to slow down a little bit, so I'm not sure if it, I just don't think it has, I don't think it has any other places it needs to be released, so I don't expect a big boom. Obviously, re-releases down the line, I'm sure, will help at some point. I'm sure they're going to re-release this, and people will come in droves because these James Cameron re-releases actually do pretty solid. But right now, it's looking like it's probably going to slow down. We might not see that happen, but it has outgrossed Titanic's worldwide run by 23 million. And this is while Titanic is currently still in theaters during its re-release. It has outgrossed that movie by 23 million. It is now in the top 3 highest grossing worldwide runs of all time, behind Avengers Endgame by 551 million and the first Avatar. That's amazing. Zoe Saldana is in all 3 of those. That is incredible. That's incredible, to say the least. So it may not be able to outgross Top Gun or the first Avatar domestically or worldwide right now, but I mean, just look at everything. Look at everything that's just happened here with this movie. This is amazing. And I keep saying this stuff as if like it's the last time we're going to talk about it and it's the last chance to praise it. It's still at number 2, which means it's probably going to hold over well still into like March, maybe even April. If it gets really lucky, we'll have to really see how that goes, if that movie is really that popular. I mean, shit, would you put it past it at this point? If Top Gun Maverick could rule as much as it did, then, this movie, why not? Let's move on to number 3, which was Magic Mike's Last Dance, and holding over pretty okay, considering that the opening weekend was $8 million. This movie made $5.5 million, adding to a domestic total of $18 million, so it is $48 million behind Magic Mike 2. Worldwide, it is sitting at $37 million, so it's $86 million behind Magic Mike 2. None of that really matters, though, since the budget, $49 million, it is still nowhere close to even crossing that initial point, let alone doubling it, so womp womp, you know what I mean? I'm sure, next weekend it'll probably do like the same amount as far as like a drop off, just because, 8 million, 5 million, like, yeah, I don't know, there's not really much of an audience here, but there's like slow trickles of like, I haven't seen it yet, you know what I mean? It's like, we're in like the leftover stages of like a regular kind of release, you know what I mean? But it's like in the second release, you know what I mean? Like, in the last couple weeks where everyone's already seen it, you'll still have like this really insanely popular movie made number 9 with like 1 million. It's like those kind of leftover crowds where it's like, I guess I'll go see it, but that's like for the second weekend of release. Oh well, moving on to number 4, which is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, making $5.2 million, adding to a domestic total of $166 million. So, it has outgrossed How to Train Your Dragon 3 domestically by $6 million, Kung Fu Panda 2 by $1 million, and Shark Tale by $5 million. It now needs $9 million until it outgrosses The Boss Baby for the DreamWorks ranking. Worldwide, obviously, it's still behind the first Puss in Boots by $132 million, and it is behind Shrek by $69 million, but it is sitting at $422 million. Over the 400 million point. That is pretty amazing, to say the least. It literally needs like 38 million more to make 5 times its $90 million budget, which is pretty amazing. I think give it 2 weekends. That's like my at minimum, at minimum, it'll take like 2 weekends to make that. But, if it does happen next weekend, that's not to be, discounted either. This movie's had quite an incredible run, and I, couldn't be prouder of this thing. Moving on to number 5, which is Knock at the Cabin. Not really holding over as well as you'd think for like an M. Night thriller that's getting some pretty solid reviews from critics, making $3.9 million, adding to a domestic total of $30 million. It is still having a hard time outgrossing M. Night's lowest grossing film, besides those other ones, Lady in the Water. It's still behind it by 12 million domestically. Worldwide, it is sitting at 47 million, so 13 million away from tripling its $20 million budget. The fact that they've already doubled it, that's fine. I don't think I don't think M. Night is in any like serious like financial trouble, since he mostly finances these movies himself, and he just signed like a deal with Warner Brothers to keep making movies for them. So he's doing okay. But this movie is still behind Lady in the Water worldwide by $25 million. And I feel like a movie like this, getting solid reviews, definitely better ones than Lady in the Water got, probably should be doing a little bit better than that. You know, I was hoping that maybe some kind of conversation surrounding this would help it, and maybe, you know, the chance is still there. Obviously, crazier things have happened, like with Puss in Boots, for example, but still, you know, I don't know. I think I was, and, you know, it doesn't help that Cocaine Bear is coming out next weekend. Not that that's like a, you know, horror, you know, like a serious, legit, like spooky, unsettling horror movie. It's gonna have some horror elements, but it's definitely promoting itself as a comedy, like a fun comedy horror movie more so than anything. But, you know, I just don't think it's going to be able to compete as well with that coming into the fray, especially now that Ant-Man's here, and then after Cocaine Bear, it's Creed 3, Scream 6, John Wick 4, you know, all these other movies are going to come around the corner. So I just don't see this one fighting it off as much as I'd want it to. You know, it is a good movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, please go check it out. Moving on to number 6, which is 80 for Brady. Obviously, it used to have like the leg up on Knock at the Cabin because of the Super Bowl, but now that that's passed, it's kind of like, well, it's still here, but not, you know, not enough to beat M. Night once again, making 3.6 million, adding to a domestic total of 32 million. Doing pretty well, actually. This is the kind of movie that nowadays you'd release and it would, you know, sink immediately, flop right away, and it still hasn't doubled its $28 million budget, but, you know, it surpassed it, you know, the initial point by 4 million, so not awful. It, you know, shows that there is still some kind of crowd willing to go see a movie like that. Just maybe you don't have to inflate the budgets to compensate for actors, you know what I mean? I don't know. Let's move on to number 7, which is Titanic, the James Cameron re-release, making 2 million, adding to a domestic total of $671 million. So worldwide, it is now sitting at $2,220 million. That's obviously still fantastic that Jimmy Cameron can re-release one of his... He doesn't even need to make a new movie. He can just re-release one of his other ones. You know, mention that there's like some technical improvements to this one, and it'll still continue to add up to a ridiculous, you know, worldwide gross. I don't think I really need to keep, you know, harping on this since I already talked about it a little bit with Avatar 2, so let's move right along to number 8, which is Marlowe. I predicted this for number 2, and I was dead wrong. I thought that there was maybe like more popularity to this detective character that Liam Neeson was playing, and obviously that is just not the case. Or if it is, they didn't know this movie came out. Obviously, it made 1.9 million, but since it opened up on a Wednesday or Tuesday, it adds to a domestic total of 2.6 million. I'm not sure what the budget is, but you know, it's got to be a little bit higher than like just any other like cheapo detective movie, because this is like a period piece detective movie. You got the costumes, you got the set design, you know what I mean? Well, I saw the movie, there's a couple VFX shots in there. They got to pay for that. So, and you got to pay Liam Neeson. He's the big star here. Him and Briarcliff. This is another one of those Briarcliff. I talked about it briefly in one of my videos last year, talking about 2 Liam Neeson movies. Briarcliff, him and that company, for some reason, they got something going on. This is another one of those movies. Makes you wonder. I wonder what kind of deal he has with them to keep making like these really low budget, crappy Liam Neeson movies. Anyways, moving on to number 9, which is Missing, making 1.7 million, adding to a domestic total of $29 million. So it is now 1 million over its quadruple budget point. That would be $28 million. So it is 1 million over the $28 million limit for quadrupling its $7 million budget. That's obviously great. As soon as it gets past 35 million, you know, that's 5 times its budget. You know, now that it's only making 1.7 and it's almost out of the top 10, you know, it might get to 35 million domestically, but at that point it might be out of the top 10. I might not be able to cover it, but hey, it was great to see this movie succeed while it was here. You know, this is a success, absolutely. And number 10, A Man Called Otto. I've been saying for the last couple weeks, you know, this movie is slowly, very slowly, almost at the point where it's doubling its $50 million budget, and now it's looking like it will. Outside of the top 10, when I can't make a video about it. Anyways, let's talk about it. It made 1.6 million, adding to a domestic total of $60 million. So for Mark Forster, the director, it is still 39 million behind Christopher Robin. And then worldwide, here's the big one, $99 million. So it is literally 1 million shy of doubling its $50 million budget. And also 16 million behind Mark Forster's Finding Neverland. But the important part is it's about to double its budget, showing that this movie in some way, shape, or form can be written off as a success. Unless they needed more money than 100 million, then oops, But as far as we're concerned, because we don't have any other kind of information, because, sometimes you'll be talking about Black Adam, then all of a sudden you get dumped with information like actually they spent a fucking lot on marketing and they needed way more, then you change your talking points at that point. But since we don't have that for A Man Called Otto, believe it or not, it's weird how it's mostly just these bigger movies, like, especially comic book movies, that all of a sudden come in with, actually, the budget was much more inflated than you'd realize. Point is, A Man Called Otto is doing okay, and that's cool, maybe. Now it's time for the fun part, the predictions for next week's top 5. Number 1, I'm once again going for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. And then number 2, I think, will be Cocaine Bear. And then number 3, Jesus Revolution. This is one of those movies that I think... I've been seeing this trailer a lot in front of other movies, so I think this movie's being marketed solidly enough. And, this is a movie that's geared towards, Christianity and, a faith-based audience. So, you will have people coming in for that. And you also look at the numbers here. Aside from Ant-Man, they're all very low, so it's enough where, like, something like that, and you have an actor like Kelsey Grammer, who a lot of people really like, you could, do well and make it into number 3 at that point. That's my prediction. Number 4, Avatar: The Way of Water, and number 5, Magic Mike's Last Dance. But what are your predictions for next week's top 5? Leave them in the comments below, and if you got your predictions right for this week, you're going to get a shout out right now. Unless you didn't get it right, then I'm sorry. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.